Park Slope first gained people's attention during the American Revolutionary War. It was one of the most pivotal areas during the Battle of Brooklyn, when outnumbered American forces were able to fight off the British long enough so that George Washington could retreat. George Washington was actually losing very badly at this point. The British even went on to occupy Staten Island and Long Island, and American troops in Park Slope held them off until George Washington and his camp made their way up to Harlem and eventually into New Jersey, winning the war. However, this was a crucial point. If it wasn't for Park Slope, the United States as we know it may not have ever existed. During the 1800s, the roads, the major roads that the Native Americans had originally created were expanded to accommodate stagecoach travel, transporting people to back and forth to Queens and also to the newly built Fulton Ferry, which went into Manhattan. Two of the major roads were the Flatbush Road and the Jamaica Road. In the mid-1800s, Prospect Park was built, and this is really where Park Slope got its identity. First, there was the Gold Coast, which was Prospect Park West, which is the eastern edge of Park Slope, and this area was marketed to the wealthy by way of its views, its beautiful views of the park. So they would use this to attract wealthy residents. So Park Slope didn't officially have a name yet, but everything was built off of the park. So local residents used to unofficially call it Park Hillside. Some called it Prospect Hill. And it was actually the original, Park Slope was the original Prospect Heights. Residents, wealthy residents who lived along the quote-unquote Gold Coast wanted to separate themselves from a lot of the new working class who were moving in order to differentiate. They called that side Prospect Heights, and that's how that became its own neighborhood. But residents eventually, of course, settled on Park Slope. In the 1950s, working class Italian and Irish Americans would made their way into the neighborhood, and that was that way all the way up until the 1970s, when Hispanics and blacks began to trickle in, and there were a lot of racial tensions. People rejected it. There was a huge gang fight between Italian gangs and black gangs in the late 60s, where they were throwing bottles and rocks at each other in large numbers. Then in the crack-fueled 1980s, crime soared in Park Slope, even though at the same time it was one of the first neighborhoods in New York City to begin the gentrification process. A lot of other neighborhoods didn't start beginning to be gentrified until the 90s and early 2000s. Another fun fact about Park Slope is the baseball team, the Brooklyn Atlantics, played out of Park Slope from Washington Park till it caught fire in 1898. And they were the first dynasty in professional baseball, as well as the first championship baseball team to be invited to the White House by then President Andrew Johnson. The Brooklyn Atlantics, after their stadium caught fire, eventually moved to Ebbets Field and renamed themselves the Brooklyn Dodgers. Let's make history.